Sweat Equity Podcast and streaming show. I'm sick. The number one business comedy You do it in the world.
I'm sick. That?
Yeah.
Oh, I nailed it.
I sound like the... There it is.
That's you. That's the human.
Our buddy Simon's coming on the show, and he's got an Australian accent, and we kind of have a man crush on him. But
kind of.
He's gonna.
We were very blatant.
He was gonna lead with we. Check out his podcast, Lead with We. Not Lead with Me, Lead with We. In his course, just Google Lead with We, and I'm pretty sure he's got the SEO on that.
One E, right? I think if you add an extra E, it goes somewhere bad.
Oh yeah, that's I heard about Cornhub the other day. Right? Free stuff. Listen to us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, wherever you can find podcasts. Really, we're on there.
I want to see how high your voice is going to get.
It's squeaky now. This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. We love Squarespace. It's a customizable, all-in-one website maker, creator, solution doer.
That's their tagline.
You can have an e-commerce store. You got an Etsy shop. Your aunt's selling some turquoise jewelry. She's kooky, but you're going to help her out. You're going to build her a website. You can do it with your tiny little paws and not have to program anything. But if you do want to program, it's scalable for that. Options for indexing on Google, Bing. Yeah, Bing. I said Bing. We're big on Bing.
What?
Indexes for you, SEO ready, and you can customize it as much as you want.
That's what you repeat back to the guy who's trying to sell you $500 a month to manage your website.
Hit up our free trial promo code in the description of this episode, and we love you. Let's get it started.
You too.
Howdy towdy.
It's called sweat equity.
Listening to the Sweat Equity Podcast.
I'm good. Are you good on your side over there?
He left.
I am just adjusting the light a bit here. Is it too dark, too bright? How you feeling?
Looks good. I like it.
Good? All right.
I like it. I like the accent.
Oh, mate, it's totally fake. I'm from New Jersey, but, a lot of tapes later, here I am sounding like an Aussie. I don't know what's going on.
New Jersey.
I'm really from Jersey.
Can you say no real quick? Because
No.
I love how Australians
No.
say no.
No, we don't know.
Yeah.
You don't do it with the R on it? No.
Nor?
No. And also what we do in Australia is we go, oh, you going to the beach? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, no. And you're like, what's with the yeah? They always go, they affirm that they're listening to you. They go, is this Thursday? Yeah. No, I think it's Friday.
Yeah, there's some Americans
do
that do that. When it's basically doing an before,
yeah, right.
And not letting and being a people pleaser, not letting the person down.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
We're all from the colonies, mate. Everyone in the colonies are people pleaser. We say sorry first.
Interesting.
You better.
We need more Australian facts. Before we get into that, we asked the guests you do your own plugs because we don't do any pre-pro.
Okay.
And I barely have a voice, so we'll see how far I get into this episode.
So if I'm going to mention something, should I just weave it into what we're talking about or at the end?
Oh, we're going, man. We record live on tape. That's how we roll. So we're keeping all of this in.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome.
So, Simon, why don't you tell people where to find you?
You can find me at a podcast that I have called Lead with We, which is all about how business shows up in a meaningful way that'll grow your business at these really challenging times. And it shows you how these entrepreneurs, these startups, these founders are getting it done in terms of making a difference and growing their business. Also, I've got a book called Lead with We, which is on Amazon. And also, if you want to do a deep dive into this thinking that we're going to talk about, go to leadwithwecourse.com, leadwithwecourse.com.
So you got a podcast, a book, and a course. Lead with We.
There we go. No entrepreneur in his own right can travel anywhere without those three these days, it seems.
It's interesting. Yeah, well, you're making it a collective effort. You turn a singular into a plural. It sounds like.
You do. You know, people like to kind of learn stuff in different ways. Some people like to read a book. Some want to deep dive into a course. And others are like, you know what? I want to learn from folks who are getting it done that you wouldn't normally hear from. And, you know, we get some amazing folks on the podcast and what they share. I mean, I learn every single episode. It's really amazing. You know, sometimes people think that you put podcasts out there to, you know, give as much as you can. That's true. But you learn so much just by doing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, this show is very gratifying, self-satisfying.
Yeah,
I'm on a lot of meds, but it's definitely selfish at first, just because I'm always curious. I think Eric is too. You know, we want to learn from people who've been there. You know,
right.
And every entrepreneur has a story.
Oh, that's so weird. I was just gonna say. I can't remember his name, John...
Lindsay?
Yes, Livesay. Who talked about storytelling, and I was using that at my job, you know, and really didn't even ever even think of it in those terms, and using a story to sell, but I was like, dang, learned it from the podcast. How about that? My own.
Yeah. Especially in kind of the marketing area we both reside in, there's no formal training. There's no continuing education. So this kind of becomes a continuing education of sorts. And so I've also taught classes and I've learned more by teaching in a lot of ways too. So anything like that. So there's a lot of that kind of woo-woo stuff. Before we dip into the lead with we kind of whole mantra. We ask everyone, did you get to listen to any episodes of this podcast before?
I only got a chance to know that I was on the podcast yesterday. So
Thank you for your honesty.
No, we
sir.
like that. That's fine.
We appreciate that.
This is just a conversation involving business and some dick jokes. Yeah. We're the #1 business comedy podcast, and because there's no one in the genre.
Now you're telling the guests that, huh?
Oh yeah,
I know. So you know, you got to show up.
I've got to weave in our branding at all times.
There you go.
I do it when I wear our merch out at the gym, and then this is our podcast. This is our podcast. You know,
just write your name on the back.
What's it called? We ask every guest that comes on for the first time this same question. What advice would you give yourself at 13?
Ooh, at 13. Well, to probably touch yourself a lot less.
Yeah.
Because
thank you. First time you got
it.
Man.
You get the genre. You get what we're going for here.
That's so refreshing.
That's a huge time suck. It gets worse. But at the same time, you know, I think we all have an internal compass that we're not ready to listen to at that age. But if we just, for God's sake, trusted ourselves a little bit more and sort of screwed whatever was expected of us or that was implied by what our parents did or expected from peers and friends and family. I mean, I grew up in Australia and, you know, none of us know who we are at 13. And, you know, all you want to do is find out how long it's going to take to get those braces off your teeth so you can kiss that girl who doesn't want to pay attention to you. I mean, that's the overriding preoccupation at 13. So I don't know. When I look back, I just wish I'd kind of trusted my instincts because I'm like in my 50s now. And if I look back at what I'll do when I retire, I think of all the things I loved doing in my late teens and early 20s, like, for example, art and surfing and things like that. And it's hilarious. We spend our whole lives climbing these mountains, all to get to the top of the mountain, look back and say, I want to go back down to the beach where I began.
Is art and surfing the way to have exquisite cheekbones? Is that how we get that?
Yeah.
You know what? It is that and self-selecting with your parents. You know, you do
right.
actually do that. You know, you go and do that. And if you're not happy when you come out, you go back in and incubate it a little bit longer.
Man, the Australian technology is amazing.
We fall for that accent. Any accent that's outside.
We will buy whatever you want. You sell us something, we'll buy it.
To be honest with you guys, we don't understand it. I don't mean to speak on behalf of
it's
other
magic.
Australians.
We don't get it either.
We're dumb as two planks in Australia. And you come over here and people listen to you and they kind of go, oh, wait a second, that sounds really smart. And you're like, really? And then you go to the UK and they're like, no, you're dumb as two planks.
Yeah, it's endearing. It's fun. Most Australian people are fun.
Plus, we're very xenophobic history-wise. We don't know. People don't know about James Cook. They don't.
There you go.
Yeah.
Look at you wheeling out some history there.
I know explorers, and then that's where it stops because I used to read maps because I was cool as a kid.
I liked maps too. What? It is cool.
Give me some Vasco da
Now we know where
Gama.
stuff is.
Give me a little Magellan, Give me Cortez, some of those guys.
I got to tell you, there's two types of people in the world. There are people who collect maps, and there are people who don't collect maps. I'm just going to leave it at that.
That's it. Those are the two people. I don't collect
Didn't
them.
say we collected
That was the iPad before the iPad. You had nothing to do in the back seat. I guess.
Right. Give me the atlas.
I guess
Let me look at this
Rand
thing.
McNally Jr.
Oh.
I know. Well, now before there was the iPad, we actually had to raise children.
Right. No, I'm totally.
We dodged the bullet there.
Tesla better figure this out because my kids are getting older, and we watch Bluey all the time. It's my favorite show. It might be my favorite show, like better than Breaking Bad. I don't know if you know but it's Australian. They call sandals thongs.
Yeah, we do call sandals thongs. And I tell you, of all the language or our vernacular, whatever we say that's hard to break, that was one of the hardest ones to break. And you never quite know why you're getting that funny look when you say,
Honey, where are my thongs?
Right. Brekkie you can put together. You're like, oh, yeah, breakfast. Okay, that's what he said. Yeah.
Brekkie you can do. Here's the thing about Aussie accent. We go up at the end of every sentence. So you go.
Always a question.
Yeah. You're like, how are you? And we're like, how are you? And everyone's always like, why is that? Why? Like, you guys walk down the stairs in the way you talk, while Aussies go kind of in tone up. And then the other thing about the English is they have like the focus when they speak is like 1 inch in front of their upper lip. So they're always talking, it's with an English accent. It's right out the front of their mouth, above the upper lip. But while the Australians, it's in the soft palate of the mouth, and they're talking up like this. While the Americans, it's lazy and it's falling down to the bottom of their mouths.
Yep.
And
that's
really
apt.
fascinating.
No, I know.
No,
I love it. I love that. I love talking about how people, just the physical mechanisms of things.
Well,
yeah.
And I think Eric likes your cheekbones more than I do. But he just wanted to see you just jaw, just whatever. You can read the phone book.
Yeah,
he's in
let's
it.
hear it.
But then you go.
Start with A.
Eric, I'm not going to, I'm old now. I'll take all I can get.
There you go, man.
And then you go Kiwi,
Looking great.
Kiwi, which would be your New Zealand, which is a way higher version of Australian at the end, right? That's how you do that.
Well, higher in terms of how they speak. If you're
You just go by Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Everything's Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
The Kiwis are very cool right now. I mean, everyone wants to move there. Their country's crushing it. They've had a great PM. They're kind of top of the pops right now. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well,
Taika Waititi. Great.
Yeah, that guy.
What We Do in the Shadows, one of my favorite movies.
He directed the last 2 Thors.
Yeah, he did.
Funny, knows comedy. That's what I like about him.
Yeah.
We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Lead with We in any kind of capacity. So you have kind of, what I was trying to get to earlier was you're basically, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. Entrepreneurship is isolating. It's lonely.
Right.
And that's the dirty secret of it. Just kind of doing a little bit of cursory research on you before we got on. It sounds like you've tried to make it more of a collective effort. Can you tell us about that?
I think that's fair. I think anyone who says that they're just crushing it every day and entrepreneurship rocks and so on is not being honest with themselves or anyone else. I think it's damn lonely. I think it's super, super challenging. You have more bad days than good. And so, we've got to lean on each other. We've got to use this kind of human scaffolding between each other to keep our heads on straight. My approach to business was this. I mean, as an Aussie, you hear that expression, "G'day, mate." You hear it everywhere. It's, almost a running joke. But it's true. In Australia, everyone's a mate. Like, there's this tall poppy syndrome. Like, if you get too big for your boots, someone's going to knock you down. And because of that mentality, when I saw what happened back in 2008, where the whole economy fell apart, and a few fellows were making a lot of money, and everyone else went to hell in a handbasket, I thought it was like, this isn't right. It just didn't feel fair to me. Nothing more than that. And that started a journey for me where I thought, well, I've been lucky enough to work on brands like Nike as a writer, and I was worldwide creative director on Motorola and launched the Razr phone way back when.
The Razr phone.
Wow.
I was early money on that. That was one of the worst investments I had, but I was like, this thing's going to change everything. And then the iPhone came out.
Marketing was good, though. The marketing was real good.
Well, thank you. But also, the snap of that Razr phone, everyone remembers the Razr phone. It was kind of like oh, you've got a brick, and you've got one of those.
That's what I call the Tesla Cybertruck. It's just a Razor Motorola phone. But I was known in my friend group of never getting the cool thing first, and then I go, I'm gonna buy this thing. I'm gonna splurge.
Blow their minds. Everybody's gonna be talking about it.
And it was just like it was obsolete once the iPhone or any BlackBerry had the keyboard.
Totally get it.
But the design, I still love the design, and I'm going to give you credit for that.
Well, I won't take any credit for the design, but the larger point is I kind of looked at it and thought, what if we used this kind of movement making that I'd seen and been part of with Nike brands and things like the Razor and applied it to business doing good? And that was back in 2010. And I started to talk to people about this, and I wrote a book called We First. And I couldn't buy a lunch. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's so cute that idiots like you exist and you want business to do good. And we're going to be over here on the corner making money. And good luck with that. See you later. Here we are, 12, 13 years later, and there's a lot of problems we're facing. We see every day. And the only way we're going to solve for them is together. We got into this mess together. We got to get out of it together. And so what we help folks do at my company, We First, is we help brands become movements, which is just a fancy way of saying, how do you get everyone that touches your brand to build your business with you? The same way your listeners build your podcast, build your reputation, build awareness of you. It's all about getting everyone pointed in the same direction. And so, I do the podcast Lead with We, and I've written the book, and we have the course to show people how they can get all their other folks, from their suppliers to their employees to their customers to partners out in their communities, to understand who the hell they are, what they're doing, and to help them make a difference together so it builds your business. And that's what I've been up to.
Sounds like you had something.
Oh, no, I was trying to not whistle breathe into the microphone.
This is why we need your dad whistle breathe.
I got rid of it. It's gone.
Can I tell you, my daughters are in Australia right now for a trip, and my wife is there as well, and I'm empty nesting, or I'm on my own, for a few weeks. A, it's amazing because you don't even know what that's like anymore, and B, what the hell, it's weird because you get all this free time. It's quite extraordinary. So, yeah, I know about the dad whistle for sure.
The moral of the story is my nose whistles too.
Well, the 50% I don't have my kids during the week. There's a solemn depression when they go for a little bit. At the same time,
there's a relief. You could say there's a relief.
There's a duality. It's both at the same time. I'm like, what do I do with all this time? But then you miss the noise and people and
I know, yeah, you miss the craziness for sure.
A little bit. So you're how is this different from injecting corporate social responsibility? Because it sounds like that's a little bit of the angle, but also you're really taking customers or clients of a business and making them you're taking them from being customers to loyal customers, I'd say.
Yeah, it's really true. It's well put. And
Oprah's the best at that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
she can do it in a snap because people trust her, right? Because she's taken them from one to the other. I guess I'm trying to figure out. It sounds a little bit of both. It's a little bit of I want to empower the customer base you currently have into being zealots, right?
Yeah, you want them to be real brand champions. And here's the fact. I mean, whether you're an entrepreneur who's just starting out or whether you're someone with a big business, maybe got a few hundred employees, who knows? Increasingly, people want to buy from, invest in, or work for companies that are doing good. Why? Because they pick up their phone every day and get terrified by all these crazy headlines about what's going on. So business is on the hook now to really show up more meaningfully. And so the difference with just normal philanthropy, where you write a check or you do corporate social responsibility, where you do a volunteer program, is it's not like you make money over here and then when you're done making money, you do some good off to the side. Rather, you work out what your purpose is for the company. Why the hell do you exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? What pisses you off so royally that you talk about it at dinner parties when you've had one beer too many and you drive people crazy late at night because this is your passion? You're not okay with the way things are. That is why you've started your company, to have a positive impact, to solve for that issue. So it's the difference between shifting from philanthropy and CSR to having a kind of foundational purpose for the company, then pulling that through the suppliers you work with, how you treat your people, the products you make, how you take it to market, and the impact you have when you give back or whatever. And then it's not just that, it's how you do that with everyone else, how you do it with competitors, how you do it with non-profit partners, how the private sector does it with the public sector. And the whole point is this: we're not going far enough, fast enough to solve for the issues that are going to screw up our businesses. Like you've got climate, you've got, extreme weather, you've got plastics in the ocean, you've got there's not enough land that's arable anymore to grow the crops that we need. We're screwing things up. So what do we need to do to move faster? We've got to really have a foundational purpose to each of our companies, that then all companies have to work together in new ways. And that's what it means to lead with we.
Sounds like a lot of extra work that a lot of people don't have the energy for. How much more is it, how much energy is going into this aside from, the normal happenings of a business?
Yeah, if you
I'm
get
just curious, like,
the good
is it
employees,
something that, because sometimes I hear something like that and they say, actually, it's less time because we do this and this. So I'm just curious.
And that's very true. I mean, it's really interesting you said that. That's kind of surprising, and I'll tell you why. I think if you don't have a foundational purpose to a company, it's really hard to keep the people you got, and you spend a whole lot of time trying to get new people because they come and go for another $5,000 or whatever it might be you might be offering them. I also think it's really hard with the churn of customers because they don't really believe in your product. They're just going for price and they'll go to somebody else just as easily. And I think it's really hard to stay relevant when, there's all these sort of scary headlines every day about what our future looks like if you don't really establish that you're making a positive difference. So I think it actually makes things a hell of a lot easier because you're still working with suppliers, you've still got employees, you're still making stuff, you're still taking it to market, but all you're doing is telling people, hey, wait a second, this is why we're doing it in the first place. And if you think that's a good idea, if you believe in the same things, come and work here. And that means you'll attract the talent, you'll keep them, they'll work better. People will buy your stuff because you know what you stand for. People will want to kind of promote your brand because you're showing up in a way that's meaningful, given all the headlines and so on. So it actually is a lot easier. And what we hear from a lot of entrepreneurs is, oh my God, we spent 3 or 4 years trying to get a product out there and we've been dealing with all this churn of customers, but we can't seem to get sticky and we can't seem to build a brand. We're just moving products. And that's where this sort of work comes in.
Would it be fair to say the problem is they don't give a shit from the top down?
I think often that's the case, but here's the challenge with not giving a shit. And
that's the diagnosis, I'd say. When you're coming into it.
It's a clinical diagnosis. It's a spreadsheet, and you work it out, and you say officially you do not give a shit.
Right.
Here's the challenge. Paperwork.
VLOOKUP in Excel. It'll hook that up.
Yeah, and if you fall into the don't give a shit category, I think there's going to be a couple of problems you're going to face. And I'm going to kind of go in reverse order. Number one, I think it's really, really hard to compete when everyone's just beating each other up on price and benefits and nothing else. You've got no brand that they're loyal to. So you're constantly having to re-up on finding customers. And you really want that loyalty, whether it's a Nike or whether it's a startup. You want someone to go, hey, I like who you are, I like what you stand for, I like the way you show up, I like your stuff, I'm going to stay with you. That's one problem. The next thing is, if you don't really commit to having a purpose out there, I think it's hard for anyone to sort of say, I want to work for you. I'm going to come and choose all the choices I've got out there, working remotely, working, in the office and so on. I'm not going to go and choose to work for you. And therefore, I think the talent churn can be really, really hard. But here's the crux of it. If you don't give a shit, if you've taken a good hard look at the marketplace and gone, screw it, I'm going to flog anything out there to anyone to make the most amount of money I can. At some point, it may not be the first day, it may not be the third day or the 3 years, 5 years into it, you're going to sit there and go, what WTF am I doing? Like, what the F am I doing? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything meaningful. And if anyone says to me that they've got enough money and that never shows up into them, I think they're a bald-faced liar. It's not true, because all of us at some point want to make a meaningful contribution with our lives. And I think that's what probably the highest cost. Just making money costs you something far more valuable than money, which is who the hell you are. And I think, entrepreneurs face that at some point in their career, whether it's at the beginning or whether they made squillions of dollars and they're sitting there in their private island going, why am I so unhappy?
Can we get an example of what this looks like in terms of, you say we tell people what we are and sort of, just sort of spreading the word. How is that done?
Yeah, I'll give a few examples. I mean, you've got some really obvious ones, like back in the day, Tom's with its 1-for-1 model where, you buy something and something's given. That's pretty clear. But like, I'll share a couple of big companies just because everybody will know who they are rather than small companies that no one knows. Like, think about Airbnb, right? Everyone knows Airbnb. You go and sit in someone's house and you go, oh my God, I'm going to open that cupboard that's locked. I wish I could, and I can't. And not only do they provide accommodation to someone on the other side of the world, whether it's a house or an apartment, and not only do they do city guides and restaurant guides and music guides, but what they do is they give free accommodation to Syrian refugees. They're giving free accommodation through their Open Homes program to refugees of the Ukrainian war at the Ukrainian border right now. And the reason they do that is their purpose is to create a world where anyone belongs anywhere. And so, yes, they're in the belonging business when it comes to accommodation, but they're also in the belonging business when they do a Super Bowl spot a few years ago about inclusion and your right to love who you want and all that stuff. And also when they gave free accommodation to Syrian refugees. Another example, well-known one, IBM. IBM, massive software company, everyone knows who they are. But they do something Call for Code. And Call for Code is when each year they go, what's the biggest crisis in the world right now? And how can we as developers all around the world solve for it? So they ask all of their developers inside the company, but also around the world to solve for the climate crisis or sustainability or whatever it might be. And that builds their reputation. It makes the developers like them. It strengthens their business. So, just a couple of examples.
Gets them away from their history of helping Nazis with their programming.
Really?
From back in the day.
You got a lot of work to do.
No, it's like Hugo Boss, same thing. Adidas, those kind of things.
There's lots of company. I mean, I think, that point is actually well taken in the sense that every company out there today, whatever industry you're in, they're on point now. And I'll tell you why. Not just because consumers want them to show up differently, and not just because their employees will call them out, like you saw at Apple and Google and Facebook and so on. Amazon. But because the investors out there are saying, wait a second, if you're not set up to succeed in the next 20, 30 years, you're not a good investment. So we're not going to put our money with you. So the investors are also calling them out. And what happens when you get employees, investors, and customers all saying, wait a second, sunshine, we're not going to support you if you're part of the problem rather than part of the solution, then market forces mean you've got to change. And probably what people don't realize as much as they should perhaps is that by leaning into the good you want to have through your products, in your community, how you treat your people, you're actually inspiring others to build your business with you because you're equipping them, giving them a reason to go, hey, I bought this widget from company X. Yeah, it's cool. Let's check it out. And they're a cool brand because of what? They're cool because of X. You've got to give them a reason to talk about you effectively to somebody else. It's word of mouth. It's timeless,
Yeah, it can't just be the product alone. It needs to have the story with it.
If the product alone was enough, there'd be no such thing called as advertising. There'd be no such thing as branding. There'd be no such thing as taglines and all that stuff.
And we're kind of circling around the basics of marketing, really, with any product, is it needs to evoke an emotion.
Yeah.
Like Lululemon pants, like they evoke an emotion in me because they give...
Boners aren't emotions.
Yeah, flat asses, they make them look like real asses.
And listen, Lululemon, every brand out there, especially apparel brands, especially beauty brands, especially food brands, they're all trying to get you from your head to your heart. They're all trying to get you and say, listen, why should a woman care about Lululemon as a brand? Why should a young girl call about Essie as a nail polish brand? They're trying to give them something deeper and emotional that kind of resonates with their audience, and that makes the company show up in a way that's going to make a difference out there. But the larger point I really want to stress is no amount of individual companies doing good will get us where we got to go. We're not getting there far enough. In terms of, if you look at all the information out there about what's impacting the economy and what's destabilizing the global economy and what's destabilizing the climate and all these different species that we're losing and so on, business more broadly has to show up differently. We have to show up differently for selfish reasons, not to do good. The reality is that business can't survive in societies that fail. And call me crazy, but if we actually, make enough of a mess of the planet that we're in, whether it's, destroying the Amazon or putting plastics in the ocean or whatever, we're just screwing ourselves. And this may seem like, suddenly now we've got to wake up and make a difference. But we've been ignoring this stuff since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010. Here we are in the early 2020s. And, it sucks to be us, but that's the truth. Here we are.
I don't like it when companies leverage that emotion out of the consumer. Like, for instance, paperless. Help us go green and let's do paperless. And
right.
It's like, bitch,
save us billions of dollars on paper.
Yeah, just like, you don't want to
just email you.
You don't want to print it out. That's fine.
Or like BP and their environmental commercials during the Super Bowl. And they're like,
shit.
look what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else did you do?
The best thing about that, though, with greenwashing, cause washing, local washing, woke washing is not only is it the media that will call them out now, and not only is it consumers will say, hey, you're saying one thing and doing another, but employees do. Employees that
I think that's the biggest
the number
driver.
one,
You had us lost until that the employees.
I was with them.
Well, you believe
those
the media?
cheekbones. I was with them all the way.
You need to be a politician here. But the with those cheekbones, I'm saying just that alone. Yeah. But the media definitely does. I don't have any trust in the media, especially when their bills are paid by pharma companies to have commercials run, right? They're never going to run a report about something the pharma companies did. And I'm big pharma. No, but I'm thinking like it's now everybody has a voice. You're seeing this with like quiet quitting in a way. That's a passive aggressive movement, I would call that. You're seeing now the employees or potential employees have leverage when they've never had that ever.
No.
Right?
It's really, really interesting. The power kind of shifted totally during COVID to the employee. For good reason. Companies had to look after their folks. But then it kind of shifted back a little bit as the economy recovered and, employees could be more choiceful. But here's the thing. I think work-life balance has been out of whack for ages. And we've all had a taste of what it's like to have a little bit more control on our lives. And we're a bit like, oh, my God, we love this. Like, we're not working around the clock. We're not commuting like crazy. And we don't feel like we're owned by our employer. And all of that's part of how a company shows up. I mean, if you are the CEO of a company and you're like, I'll use anyone to make my stuff and I don't care what damage they do to the environment or the people they hire, and I treat my people like crap, and I flog any dodgy product to the marketplace and charge as much as I can, the days when you can get away with that are gone, not only because of consumers and employees, but regulation is going through the roof. This ESG, this environmental, social, and governance regulation. Basically, the government's on the hook to not have all these great carbon emissions and so on, and therefore they're making all of us change the way we behave. But all of that's a bit lofty. I mean,
I would say more market forces than government. Government's always late to the game. They're showing up at the barbecue a couple hours late.
Exactly. And also, if you don't have regulation to back you up, people aren't really going to do stuff. So you do need them at some point for sure. But the bottom line is, if you're sitting there as an entrepreneur and you're sitting going, wow, 2023, is a recession coming? Is there going to be inflation? My customer's going to spend less. Meanwhile, employees want more from me. And meanwhile, there's still the war in Ukraine going on, and I hear all this noise about climate, and I see all the news stories about extreme weather. How do I need to show up differently? The simple answer is, in my mind, you shift from being a me brand to a we brand, which is just a simple shift from it's about me and what I'm getting, and damn the consequences to anybody else. And flip that inside out and say, well, wait a second. How can I inspire the people who touch my brand, my company, my product, to actually want to work for me, to want to promote my product, to actually think it's kind of cool that we're in the community, and then put it out there in a way where everyone talks about you. And we all know, like every one of us has bought a product where we go and talk about it to somebody else, or we say a company's cool because of the way that they're showing up. And you're just going to see more of that. So if you want to be on the right side of the market forces, the companies that are sort of blowing up, you need to do that. And I'll give you one dramatic example. Think about cars. You mentioned Elon Musk. When I did my first book, We First, it was like 2011. And in writing the book, Elon Musk had launched Tesla, and every auto brand in the US was trying to put him out of business. It was a pylon. They were pummeling him.
Yep.
Absolutely pummeling him. I don't even remember that. But
yeah, I wanted to bring this example up, but yeah, they're doing it by just doing it. Right.
And here we are now, it's 12 years later, and every major automaker in the US has committed to phase out completely combustion engine vehicles and transition to electric vehicles.
And their mission statement is to make all cars electric or something like that. It's very
robotic.
To enable sustainable mass transportation was the original commitment. So, if the auto industry is going this way, then think about clean beauty and all the packaging and all the ingredients that think about clean food. Everyone's falling over themselves about better food, and think about clean apparel. Everyone's saying, it's organic, it's sort of certified, it's fair trade. So even if you're a bit on the sidelines around all this stuff, you've got to be a good entrepreneur and sit there and look at the market forces and say, what are people rewarding? And give it a chance. And then what you'll notice is that people actually, it gives a story behind your product that is meaningful as long as you're doing it authentically and not greenwashing and all that stuff. And people will want to work for you, they'll want to buy from you, and it'll help your business. And we see it time and time again, and we're doing it inside startups all the way to the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, it's internal brand messaging, right?
Yeah.
You get to a certain level, you have to really kind of empower everybody to believe in the message you're doing. And I would say it takes, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a company, it goes from being an immature, small business, micro, even once you become that mature business, you have to really start giving the employees, you have to hire. You should be hiring to figure out what makes them tick in that way. If it's straight up money, right. Or they want more than that, or they want money and that. You have to kind of figure that out in the hiring process.
That is so important what you just said. I mean, my company, there's 3 things I look for. You're good at what you do, you give a damn, and you're over yourself, because we don't want any ego and so on. And when you hire for culture, you avoid so many problems. If you know who you are, you know what your purpose is, you know what your values are at a company, you can choose between candidates so easily. You can go, this person's not right. Or, and you get the other folks in your team to kind of interview them as well, and they're either a fit or they're not. If you've got a really, really good person, but they're a bad egg, they're going to screw up your company, in 5 minutes flat. And it doesn't matter how good they are, it's not worth having them there,
Yeah, if I'm hiring a programmer, I want to get a box of toothpicks and just throw them on the ground and see how fast they count them.
The winner gets the job. You are furthest on the spectrum. You win.
That's what I was going. We keep these to about 33 minutes, so I appreciate you coming on, and we have much to learn.
Well, I think, whether we like it or not, the issues that we see around us right now are not getting better, they're getting worse, and they're all connected. And it's going to put this new expectation on business to show up differently. And that means your company, even if you're a solopreneur just starting out at your kitchen table in your garage right now, if you look around the world, if you look around in the headlines around the world, and you look at what's happening nationally, and you look at what's going on in your industry, and look at the sort of brands that are getting the bump that they need and that people are preferring to buy, they're companies that are pretty clear about who they are, what they care about, and they share that story. And their products are proof of that commitment. So I'd encourage everyone to think that way, because we want you to succeed as an entrepreneur. And we also want you to succeed so the positive impact you want to have happens, and we'll all be better off. And that's all there is,
Well, appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you on some other time just to hear that sweet voice.
You know what? Sure.
And thanks for rescheduling so many times. That's our bad on our side, I think.
Yeah, no worries. Good to chat, guys, and thanks to all the folks who are listening in.
Thank you.
See ya.
Alrighty.